Steve's thing this morning.
Yes.
I mean, it's good for Steve, not for
Yeah, not for
Joe. I'm going to clarify.
One of the things is that.
I told him we should look for a match.
I figured you'd be up for all those comments.
So we did.
Good to go.
Thank you. Okay, so Board of Education meeting, June 24th, 2025 comes to order at, is that 6:36? We'll do a roll call. We'll start with Mike,
Mike Russo.
Robert Carr,
Vinnie Catadella.
Debbie Sherman.
Nicole Vivian McCraft.
Victor Boston.
Sue Condon.
all right. Pledge of allegiance, please stand. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, so do you have any amendments to the agenda? Any amendments to the agenda? Any amendments to the agenda? Hearing none, we will move on.
I'm going to make a motion to approve the 6/10/25 regular Board of Education minutes with noted corrections.
Second.
All right, any discussion?
So there's a couple of motions that don't have seconds noted in the minutes, so Vinnie's going to
Yeah,
fix
I'll go rewatch and correct those, and I'm sorry for sending it out so late, I didn't realize it wasn't on the agenda.
All right, so all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? Motion carries. Christine,
Yes.
audience of citizens. All right, hearing none. Board correspondence and communication. Vinnie, did you see the correspondence about goes and principal?
I don't think that came to me, no,
Dr. Adamowski,
going back to double check.
about the parents that commended Amy, and we're gonna.
Oh, I have, yes, I received that. I did communicate with them. I asked them for their permission if I could place that in their personnel file. They gave permission and I placed it in their personnel file.
Yeah, so basically it was a very glowing, very happy, very, I don't know, congratulatory email about Amy Massett, our principal here at GOES, and how well she's doing in her job. And the two parents, it was a husband and wife, I believe,
Yes.
they just expressed their gratitude to Amy and how and the good job she's doing here at GOES.
Awesome.
If anybody wants to see it, I think I still have it, I can forward it to you. No student representatives today, so report of the superintendent.
So just several things I'd like to share with you, which are kind of end of the year pieces of data. The first, which was in your board docs as an attachment, is the 23-24 four-year cohort graduation rate. This comes out every year, a year later, right, than graduation. But it's one of the 12 factors in the Connecticut Next Gen Accountability Plan, which will be received later this summer. And you have typically received that at workshop session or as a discussion point sometime in November. At least your last one was received last November. But this is a pretty big deal because it's an important indicator. And you'll see the 23-24 results that will be used in the Next Gen report that comes out this summer. Oxford is at 94%, the state at 88.9. So that's a 5-point overage over the state, which is exceptional. Anything over 90% here is considered exceptional. And you'll see that this will fluctuate. Last year was the highest, or the year prior, 22-23 was the highest year ever historically for Oxford. But it was 94% the year prior to that, 21-22. So you should expect this to fluctuate around the 90% mark. to see that the high school is maintaining, an extremely high graduation rate. So this is just a piece of good news. It'll be reflected in the district's accountability index and the next gen report, but nice to see at this time of year, and by all indicators, it looks like the 24-25 will be equally good, if not better. Now, the next item is going to require some explanation, and this is the attendance report, teacher attendance report, or certified staff attendance report for 24-25 school year. The genesis of this involved a conversation that I had with principals, who, several of which, this was around the time that they were completing teacher evaluations. And in the Connecticut teacher evaluation plan, if a person has very bad attendance, it is supposed to be addressed in the evaluation, and the teacher then is encouraged to develop a goal around that area for the next school year. The goal being to improve attendance. And there were questions from the principals regarding, well, how bad is bad? Generally in the state, about more than 20 days is considered very bad, right? That would warrant being addressed in the evaluation. But it also raised a question. There was concerns over, how many people were actually in that category, and what if you're the principal, what is the actual attendance in my school? Because you're not monitoring that on an ongoing basis. You're just dealing with replacing the people that are out with substitutes. This is a complicated issue because we also we have several types of leaves going on simultaneously. There's people who take FMLA leave, and some of that can be regular FMLA for a defined longer period of time, and some of it can be intermittent FMLA leave, where you take a number of days off on a regular basis, but under the FMLA rubric. And we also have maternity leaves, right? So in order to get accurate data on this, you have to follow the way the state calculates it, because the state does have a percentage on this on EdSite, right? And so this report calculates it's the same way that the state does, which is to remove any of the long-term leaves, remove maternity leave, remove FMLA leave, both regular and intermittent. And what you're basically dealing with here is absenteeism, which is less than 3 consecutive days, but regular absenteeism and personal leave, right? Those are the two factors here. Now, our teachers can take up to 4 personal days, and they are allocated 15 sick days. But this is not an entitlement. This is there to take it when you need it, and they accumulate for a reason. Because if you're ever seriously ill, right, you have an operation, God forbid you have cancer or something that's long term, those days are available for you to take as paid leave. So this report just deals with those 2 factors, absenteeism and the personal days. Now you'll see the way the columns are set up. In that first column, that is the total number of certified staff at each of our schools. And then we have a calculation of the potential work days by taking that number and multiplying it by 184. And that's how you would get that number. And so Then we have from our own Power School records, which, by the way, is how the state derives theirs. We have to send this data to them from Power School. Then you have the certified days absent, again, excluding the FMLA days. That will lead you to the next calculation, which is the average number of days absent per certified staff. Now, to put that in context, you would go to the CT.gov Ed site, and when you do, you find that the average teacher days absent in Connecticut, the state average, is 13.3. Okay, so that represents a rather wide range. There are districts that are as low as 7%, 5 to 7%. There are districts as high as the high 20%. There's one urban district in the state, I believe, that's at 27%. So this is an average, right? But the state average is 13.3. So on that basis, you could see that the district is higher, has higher absenteeism than the state average at 15 days. And then you can see the schools with Grade Oak having what could be considered average attendance. Oxford Middle School having above average attendance. And then you would see the high school and Quaker Farms having greater absenteeism than the state average, with Quaker Farms being the highest of those. As you work to the other columns, we have to deal with the fact that this is masked. The average at each of our schools is masked by the fact that it is driven by a much smaller number of staff that have exceptionally bad attendance, right? And so those are the people who are in that category of 15 to 20 days. And we have a few that are over 20. But if you look at that number, you'll see that that's the number that's really driving the attendance average of the school. So this is where we are based on the data that is comparable to the way the state calculates this for the state. This is very good baseline data, but it also suggests that we need to have an approach to this, right? I've talked to you on a couple of occasions about the fact that not having an assistant superintendent for personnel and instruction has left a very big gap and hole for certified staff, because this is normally an issue that is handled by the HR department in school systems, right? So, and there are protocols and procedures that are recommended and widely used in this area. So, for example, in many school districts, when a person reaches 10 days of absence, they have a discussion with the HR person or the assistant superintendent and their principal around, the fact that, it's January and there's already 10 days of absence. So what are we going to do to, deal with this? And what can the district do to support you? What can you do to support your own health? And then, it's also a fairly common practice at 15 days to say to a person, further absences have got to be documented by a doctor's note or a doctor's report. And then, you would have a way of monitoring this further in terms of determining that there actually is a health reason, right? And helping the person to resolve that, whatever that problem is. Also, wellness. Megan Polganowski started, an approach to wellness for the district, and that's an important factor here too, which again comes out of the work, would come out in our case of the work of the assistant superintendent for personnel and instruction, which is effectively the HR person for the certified staff. But anyway, we have this initial report. This will be shared with principals in terms of their own, awareness of it in their building. And I hope that it can be married with, some policies and procedures that can be used internally in order to address particularly the schools where this is high or higher than the state average. I think this also will provide some very good baseline data because it's my understanding you've not received this report at least recently in prior years, right? So now you have it. Now you know. Next year's report can be compared to this, and you can make a determination. Has attendance gone up or down or sideways? And again, this will be very good for goal setting in terms of the assistant superintendent when they're hired, and just district awareness in general. My experience with this has been, as soon as there's some awareness and, the sun shines on this, awareness alone will have a positive effect on attendance. Just for people know that it's noticed, it's being monitored. Principals awareness. I'm going to discuss this in my last meeting with the OEA leadership so that they're aware of it. And again, I think just awareness in itself is a positive thing here. So let me ask you if you have any questions on this, because I've covered a lot of information very quickly here.
I actually have a couple of questions, and we'll go around the horn. So go ahead. I'll ask mine.
My question is simply, I don't really understand it, or can someone give an explanation of how come this has not been brought to light in the last few years? I mean, this doesn't get this bad overnight, so was it someone dropped the ball somewhere? I'm just curious as how we got to this point.
If I may, because I've been here 8 years, and we had, one of the things that one of the superintendents came in and says that, we micromanage, the teachers don't trust us and all the other stuff. And one of the proposals is that we treat them like babies because we make them follow the policy in the book, okay, which kind of was very similar to what the students had. And we said, well, and he says, they're responsible citizens and adults and they can handle it. They should not have to require a note to take a day off. So I think the board is one of the big instigators in this, because we said, okay, that sounds like a fair deal, let them do what they want.
Well, I would agree they should not need a note to take a day off. We're talking about that only in cases where someone is pushing 20 days and efforts have already been made in terms of talking with them about their attendance. That's like the last resort. But the fact that you would monitor this and address it incrementally with the intent of helping the person get better attendance and raising their awareness over its importance, I think is what's important.
But that dovetails into that we've never had accurate reports on the teachers' attendance. So this just dovetailed into not having any responsibility, because if you go back to our seed reports and stuff like that, whatever the state calls them, everybody was perfect, okay? So we had a lack of actually doing the control by the state. We never got this report. Now, I've asked for this report, not the right way, not the right words, but I looked at EdSite for 5-6 years now, and ours were going up. It used to be 9, 8, 9, and every year it kept going up and up, to this. And I brought it up in curriculum, I brought it up in many things, because they Teachers' Day, they testing days, and then you put all this in, how many days or hours does a kid get, with this kind of poor performance? And there's other episodes that I know of different schools where things were assigned and people decided not to go to it and took the day off. So there's even more under this surface. And my other thing is that who what committee in here should have been asking about this, you know? I mean, it's quite obvious on Ed's site. I mean, you just gotta look at it, and you can say, what's going on there? This is not a mystery. But thank you for the report, you know?
Well, and I think the point you're making that is so important is the loss of instruction that occurs from absenteeism. When people are sick, they should be home, right? And, you have personal business that from time to time requires you to take a personal day. But what we're talking about in some cases are, people who just get into a schedule of missing a couple days a month. And, you're not checking on whether somebody's sick and under those circumstances. And it enacts a tremendous toll in terms of the instruction of an individual student.
Because the other part, and then because it's all history, I'm glad to see this, and I think we can focus on it, is the fact is that during the union negotiations, and the very first ones that I happen to be involved in, is that in the contract was stipulations that you wouldn't take days off on long weekends, because that was a big episode. Because every meeting would be, we don't have substitutes, we don't have this, we don't have that. And you'd look at the records that you could at one time get, is that everybody was taking long weekends. So it's actually had to be put in verbiage in the contract that you will not take long weekends, unless you have a legitimate reason, something like that. So all I'm saying is that I'm glad it's here. And I think whatever people were here at that time actually contributed to this lackadaisical approach to actually being in school.
Well, you don't know what you don't know, and, when things are brought to your attention, then you can do something about it, right? So I'm hoping this serves that purpose. Did that answer your question, Sue? Okay. Anybody else?
I just wanted to clarify, when does the state release their averages? Because the 13.3 you mentioned was from 2 school years ago, and that's the latest thing they have available.
That's
And
correct.
our data in 22-23 was not 15, it was 13, so we were under the average by a little bit in 22-23, but there's nothing since then. And of the 5 years of data that is available on the website, we were below the state average 3 years, and the 2 years we were above, it was a 0.1 and 0.3 days. So we were right on line with what most districts are seeing, at least from an average. I just don't wondering why they're 2 years in the rear with having that data public.
They are, and, that's the latest data.
Yeah.
I'm offering that just to give you a context for comparing the numbers in that middle column, right? Now, this has had an effect from COVID. I believe if you go back to like 2015, it was something like 8% was the state average. And then it went up to 10%. I think 10 point something was in the year before COVID.
10.4 or 10.4 to 7.
Yeah, and so, and now, you're seeing the COVID effect, and that average, if I recall this correctly, the average was the same the year prior as this latest year, right? So we haven't been able to bring it down to the pre-COVID levels. I mean, no one has. But yet, that state average is still a point of comparison to where we are. And it also does not negate the extreme level end of this, which is, when you're talking about 20 days out, right? Which is outside of an of a FMLA or maternity leave.
Yep. So I think this is a great management tool. I think the administrators should be using it moving forward. I don't necessarily know how we as the board would use it, other than to know about it. I think the admins, if there's a staff member who's hitting that higher end, should be using their ability to discipline or address that employee. While it's great information, I think it's a management tool. I don't think it's necessarily something that.
I think your management oversight role is to is to set the expectation that the administration of the district will plan to address this in some way. In other words, to come up with a way of addressing it as opposed to not doing anything, right? And I mentioned to you that, there are lots of practices in our state around this in terms of, counseling people at the 10-day mark. When you go above 15, requiring a doctor's note. There are different protocols that different districts use. But I think from your standpoint, it's the expectation that this will be addressed in some logical, humane way, right, with staff.
Wouldn't that be part of their evaluation?
It has not been prior to this. Our state system does allow this to be used in the evaluation if you have extreme absenteeism. And in fact, it goes as far as to say that once that occurs, then the teacher has to develop a goal in that area for the next year. Now, Oxford, to the best of my knowledge, has not done that in the past. This came up this year because of a concern expressed by principals. And Eric and I were able to fashion some language that we gave them to use in their evaluations in the cases where that was appropriate. Because it was a change and it was because it was a new thing that had not been done before, we advised principals to do it with, the couple of people who had the worst attendance in the building. And those were all over the 20-day mark. But again, if you were to refine this further, you would develop a protocol where you'd say, okay, at X days we're gonna do this. At Y days, the response will be this. I think you as a board you always have a management oversight role to expect that certain things happen and that the district is working to have the best attendance possible. I think another role that you can play as a board is to recognize exceptional attendance. Somewhere in this mix, there's got to be somebody with perfect attendance. And there's got to be some group of teachers, in the range of less than 5 days or less than 3 days of absenteeism. Those people should be recognized. And they're role models that express a level of dedication that is exceptional and deserving of recognition.
Okay. Vinny, you asked one question that I wanted to know about, like in terms of when was the information compiled during the time frame. So if I'm understanding this correctly, this information was compiled 2 years ago.
Well, the 13.3 is the latest state average that's available.
That's available.
So it's all we can compare it to.
So my question is we have this new law about time off and taking an hour off here or there. As a district, there's not a whole lot we can do about that. The law is the law, but that there's a potential issue there as well that we should be thinking about. I do like the idea of recognizing the good attendance. I went to high school with a guy, K through 12, he never missed a day, not once. Couldn't believe it. So I think as a board, we need to be aware of how this new law and time off works and how we can track that and make sure that, I'm guessing maybe, I don't want to put you on the spot, Zach, but
Sure.
That's something that we would not be able to manage. Would that be correct? In terms of good attendance and bad attendance? If they're taking an hour off here and there, especially at the end of the year?
So, hi everyone.
Zach,
So as a general principle, you, as a district, you absolutely have the prerogative, arguably the responsibility to manage attendance. As was mentioned, there are certain limitations on that ability through collective bargaining, through various laws, FMLA, the paid sick leave law that you're referring to. That law is very challenging. I was in a district last night that is working to navigate some of the changes. There's a act that was passed this year that Governor Lamont has yet to sign, but there's a relocation that he will sign, that provides paid sick leave, that a district can use the minimum increment for leave referenced in any collective bargaining agreement. So I don't recall what each of your collective bargaining agreements, what they specify as the minimum increment of leave. But if your teacher contract, for instance, states that leave shall be taken in full day increments, you could rely on that. And that is helpful because it avoids the situation where a person's leaving for an hour here or there, which is a nightmare from a subs.
Right, yeah.
So that is a tool that is helpful. I'd also mentioned that for the members that were on the teacher negotiation team last time, if you'll recall, we made some very significant changes in terms of the district's ability, the administration's ability to require things like medical certificate to substantiate the need for leave. The paid sick leave law, as you may know, prohibits mandating that a staff member produce that, but that's only for the first 40 hours. So it's a very complicated area.
Thank you, Zach.
Sure.
Does anybody have anything else? Okay, we'll go on to pathways.
Last item, I just wanted to make you aware that, this is an area that the board has expressed great interest in, particularly the CTE, Career Technical Education, pathways to graduation. Based upon that, we've done a lot of exploration in that area in terms of what the high school is actually doing. And, this is grounded in the fact that the high school reform legislation, which now I think is a good 4 or 5 years old, really ended the practice of the one-off electives, which were pejoratively referred to as the shopping mall electives, where a student could take 5 electives, but they could take one course from one area and another course from some other area, and a third course. These electives were unrelated. They may have been high interest, for the student, but they were unrelated. And that was replaced by the concept of pathways to graduation, where your 4 or 5 electives had to be related. And they then led to a capstone. So the capstone was the application of the skills and knowledge learned in the 5 related electives to a real world problem or issue. And then for the CTE pathways, the internship served as the capstone. Because again, the student was applying in a real world situation through their internship, the skills and knowledge learned in the courses. In the course of evaluating, where we are at Oxford High School, we found that we really only have one legitimate pathway, and that is the Project Lead the Way, which is the STEM pathway. And I think there is a heightened awareness now on the part of high school leadership and staff that we need to be moving to develop more pathways. And also we have a sense of what is going to be necessary to develop a CTE pathway, the Career Technical pathway, which many of you have expressed an interest in. So I've asked Eric Williams to take the lead on this in terms of researching this and preparing a comprehensive workshop discussion that you could have as a board so that a plan could be developed for the high school. And this plan will invariably have budgetary implications, right? And so Eric has looked at the latest state report And Deb, I think he's discussed this with you, or at least you're aware of the work that's underway. There are a set of state recommended pathways. You can have other pathways besides these, but there are a set of state recommended pathways and that need to be brought to your attention and so that you have awareness of them. In addition to that, in the state accountability plan, the Next Gen Accountability Plan, there are actually additional points being given for the number of students who are in CTE pathways. And right now, because we don't have any CTE pathways, we're at a disadvantage in the state accountability plan. So there's a lot to this. There's a lot of moving parts to it. But I think, we've learned a lot, at least at the staff level, in terms of what is involved in this, what needs to be done. For example, for someone to have students in a CTE internship, you have to have a teacher supervising it that has CTE certification. That's the O20 certification. Apparently there was a discussion at one point with Seymour around sharing this, right? A person, and that may be a viable option for the future. But all these things I think are necessary in terms of your awareness in order to develop a plan to accomplish this in the high school. And again, the plan is going to have budgetary implications because there are simply some courses that will have to be offered that we're not offering now. And those will have to be offered either by hiring someone or by supporting a current member of the staff to gain certification in a particular area in order so that they could offer that course. So there's lots of opportunities for development of staff here that are very positive as well. What I'm getting to with all of this is to just make you aware that this is being worked on. I had hoped we could get to that this year. We're out of time, and you've had bigger fish to fry and other things to occupying your time. But I'm going to recommend to Dr. Marino that sometime in October or November would be a good time for a workshop session on this, where it can all be laid out. You can give your reaction and priorities, and that would serve as the basis for developing a plan prior to the development of the 26-27 budget.
Okay. Anybody? All right. So we're gonna go to action items. First one being approval of description of duties, the chief operations officer, and there is an attachment to that.
Want me to make a motion?
Yes, please.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the description of duties for the Chief Operations Officer.
Do we have any discussion?
I'll second.
Sorry. I always forget this. Anybody? Okay. So all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstained? Motion passes. Approval of description of duties for the finance director. Do you have an attachment for that as well?
I'd like to make a motion to approve the description of duties for the Finance Director.
Any discussion? Or sorry, I did it again, damn
I'll
it.
second. I'll second.
Thank you, Deb. Discussion.
This is basically everything that Howard was already doing.
I think for the most part, Howard and Dr. A and Dr. Marino collaborated on this.
Correct. There's really two purposes to this. One was to upgrade the position from business manager, which is more of an accounting position in school systems, to finance director, which has a broader scope of responsibilities, as Howard has been performing them, right? And the second was that we needed this relative to the interim assignments that are coming up.
Anybody else? All those in favor? Opposed? Abstained? Motion carries. Approval of description of duties, special education director. There's an attachment for that.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the description of duties for the special education director.
Second.
I'll second.
Thank you. Discussion. Yes.
Who is currently in charge of SRBI?
Well, Megan has done work in SRBI, both through her role as special ed director and as assistant superintendent following that. I'm not sure it was specified as to where it was. Different districts will handle this differently. Some will handle it in general ed. Others, it will be an extension of special ed. It will be the prequel.
The reason I'm asking is that I've always saw it as a feeder to special ed. You
Yes.
start off tier 1, tier 2,
Yes.
and then you get, so I would like that to be added into this description if possible.
We can certainly do that.
The second thing is I would also like to add in that as far as qualifications are concerned, that the next person should have proficiency with CT SEDS, because that's the program that drives the IEPs here in Connecticut, and it's complicated, and they are the person in charge of making sure that it's being implemented correctly. And I don't see that currently in this document, so I would like to add that proficiency with CT SEDS.
So that would be definite for the special ed supervisor. We could put it here as well.
I would feel better having it here because, I mean, the buck stops with the director as far as I'm concerned. And I know that a lot of Megan's time was put into making sure that the IEPs were documented correctly with CT SEDS.
Can you spell that, Nicole? CT said?
It's CT, like
Yep.
Connecticut-SEDS. And then the last thing is, I really think that a director needs to have the ability to draft SMART goals. And by SMART, I mean specific, measurable, ambitious, relevant, and time-bound, because that's been an issue we've had in the past as well.
That would be under key responsibilities,
Sure.
draft SMART goals. All right, okay, so we've got the proficiency with CT SEDS. You had another one though, it was
SRBI?
SRBI.
But even if it's something as simple as oversee SRBI program.
Yeah,
Nicole, would you be comfortable with just adding that to the motion?
Sure.
Dr. A, what do you?
yeah, yes, I've got the notes on it. If you could add it to the motion, we can just do it and publish it.
Does anybody have a problem with adding that to the motion? No. Everyone? Okay. So we gotta amend I'm sorry.
Do I retrieve the motion and then amend it? I'd like to make a motion to rescind the original motion to approve the description of duties for the special education director.
And I'll second it.
So back to discussion. Everybody,
I'd like to make a motion to approve the description of duties for the special education director with the amendments.
Can I just stop for a second?
Yeah.
To vote.
to rescind, correct?
And
Okay, so discussion on rescinding the motion. Anyone? Okay,
the first one.
so all those in favor of rescinding the motion?
Uh,
Aye. Those opposed? Abstained? Motion passes to rescind. All right, now we need the next motion.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the description of duties for the special education director with the noted amendments
So,
as discussed during the meeting.
yeah,
And I'll second.
discussion on that. In favor?
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Abstained? Motion passes.
For the personnel list, since no one's here, I'd like to make. do you
Yeah,
mind if I do the
Go
whole
right
list?
ahead, man.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the certified personnel appointment list as attached to the agenda.
I'll second. Discussion? Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstained? Motion passes. All right. 7E, authorization for Superintendent Ralph Marino to hire certified staff during the summer months.
I'd like to make a motion to authorize Superintendent Dr. Ralph Marino to hire certified staff during the summer months.
I'll second. Discussion?
Just understand I'd just like to know, what's the scope for this? Is this for certified staff? This doesn't include administration?
It includes all staff. This is, I noticed this was not on your agenda last year. And so this is a typical motion that school boards enact at their last meeting when they're not having meetings during the summer. It allows the superintendent to make commitments to people, the superintendents and their designees, in the case of non-certified staff, to make commitments to people and not lose them when you have a good candidate during the summer, pending, the board's ratification later in the.
I'm just wondering in terms of scope, like, for example, hiring a director of special ed or hiring the assistant superintendent. Would this motion allow Dr. Marino to appoint them? It's my understanding we have policy that doesn't.
We're
With
supposed
this-
to appoint administration.
Yes, so you have a policy that says you must approve all administration.
Yes.
So I'm assuming that, we'd like to include in this the assistant superintendent, the assistant principal at the elementary level. Because that's time sensitive.
We've done Zoom meetings if we needed to do them over the
We've done
summertime.
them multiple over the
we've-
summer.
Yeah.
We've stayed away from, in the past, doing, allowing summer appointments of administration. It would be certified staff, it's not a problem, but administrators, we've pretty much followed our
Yeah, we
policy
can
in the
just do a
past.
Zoom meeting or something if that's needed.
To move it quickly.
So let's limit this to certified staff only.
Well, it's what's listed. I just wanted to make sure I was understanding it correctly.
Yeah.
Limit to non-administrative.
Yeah, just
So for the administrative, your policy would prevail.
yes. Okay, anybody else? Did it get seconded?
Somebody get seconded?
I seconded it.
Oh, okay.
Everybody good with the discussion? All right, all those in favor? Opposed? Abstained? Motion carries.
This one I'm gonna say slowly because I think word for word has to get correct.
Yeah.
If I'm understanding this. I'd like to make a motion to authorize a change to the authorized signers for the Ed 099 agreement for child nutrition program. And authorize Dr. Ralph Marino Jr., Superintendent of Schools, as the signature, one primary signatory. And authorize Michael D'Agostino, Chief Operations Officer, as the signature, two secondary signatory.
Second.
Vinny, I'm just gonna email you that.
That sounds great.
Okay, any discussion on this? All those in favor? Opposed? Abstained? Motion carries. Okay. Report of the chair designee, I'm gonna keep this pretty short. We got, authorization from the state this morning. That basically says that Dr. Ralph Marino is, qualified and can take over the role of superintendent for Oxford Schools. We were waiting for that specific document in order for me to sign the contract. So I filed the state permission, as for lack of a better word, with the town clerk this morning. And then around, I want to say around 1 o'clock this afternoon, I signed the contract. Then Dr. Marino also signed the contract, and I will be taking that contract to the town clerk tomorrow to file it with the town clerk. Okay. Graduation. I was extremely happy with the way that graduation went. I thought it went very, very well. The only thing that I will say is that the security for the high school graduation was very well done. We did not the same thing was not followed for the middle school. Because they did not approach our security director to do so. I basically have said that it needs to be the same next year. And if you, this is more about parking and traffic control than anything else. The traffic control for the middle school, it was pretty crazy at the beginning when everyone was trying to come in. It was pretty bad when everyone was trying to go out. So I think we can do better next year, and that's my plan for next year, to have that done much better. I don't want to go into a whole lot more than that for obvious reasons, but I think it needs to be the same next year. If you'd like to discuss that with me offline, I'd be more than happy to have a discussion with you about the things I saw and stuff like that. Okay?
I have some notes about handicap access for the middle school graduation as well.
I agree.
So,
And so there is, in what's in the military terms is called an after-action review that Brian has done. Is I can show you guys that, and I will share it with you if you want to see it. But that is one of the things that was a very large issue. We only had 2 of the side-by-sides running, and people were waiting for an extended period of time to leave and to get in. So it's something that Brian has thought about and is in the AAR, and I will share that with the board so you can see his assessment of what happened during the thing. Other than that, I like the fact that the kids were in front of the thing and of the stage, and the stage was out towards the thing. I liked all of that. Thought it was set up very well. I think Heather and Sylvia did an excellent job organizational wise. Couldn't have been happier. I don't know if you guys have any comments about it. I'll open it up after I'm done to that, but I thought it was very, very well done. And I believe we are going to, sometime in the beginning of August, we will have a workshop with new superintendent. We'll do the retreat, do all that kind of stuff. We'll work on the time frame for that. I was talking with Zach this morning. We may have a few new members in November that need to be educated about how things work. So I think we'll discuss having some type of training for the new members in November. But other than that, it'd be nice to not see you guys until August. I'm joking.
Really? Come on.
So, does anybody have any comments about?
And then when we're talking about just security for graduation, can we also put on the table maybe separating them like we used to and have them at different days?
Yes. Yes, I think that might open a big old can of worms, but I think that it's certainly worth a discussion that we separate, do the middle school on one day and the high school on another. There are advantages and disadvantages to both, and I've had conversations with both. Well, I've only had a conversation with Heather, and I had a conversation with Dr. A about it. I have not discussed it with Dr. Marino yet, so we'll have a conversation. Okay, anything else? Perfect. All right. Subcommittee reports. Joe, he is not online or anything, right? No. Not much has changed. I don't know if you have any information that I don't have.
Nothing grand except to say I think the bathroom was successful at the high school graduation.
Okay. What's going on down there?
Bathrooms.
Oh, okay. It is what it is, but
It's
They were
nice
clean.
that children could use the bathroom versus having to go to use a porta potty, so I'm happy about that. I don't think there's too many updates. Our last meeting was a month ago in May, so I don't know if we have any coming up, but yeah, nothing else to really add.
curriculum?
Yeah, we had a meeting June 11th. A lot of items were discussed. We had an OHS English resource change. So just so everybody knows that there's resources for English and science. hit social studies, they come to the curriculum committee for vetting out to make sure that it's what we want, and that was approved. Summer curriculum work, one of the plans is they're going to be working on K-5, the second year of the ELA program. They're also talking about the HMH. We're going to work on math, grade 2, transitioning to grade 3, scope and sequence. They're going to work on the middle school library media, which needs to be rewritten, which is probably from the 1980s, but it needs to be updated to include some digital AI skills. We talked about, there was a change to the 4th grade teaching model, which is now the same as what the 5th grade was doing. Amy presented it and it was approved, so it's going to basically mimic what 5th grade has done. Amy was extremely happy with where 5th grade has ventured and gotten to, so she wanted to try it with the 4th grade. We talked about the career pathway discussion. Eric's working on the draft that he's been working on. Talks about the 2019 Department of State of Connecticut National Labor Cluster career pathways. He's working on that, trying to match up the courses that we have to what pathways there would be. One of the other things which we didn't talk about was building limitations might be a problem because we don't have a lot of room to be able to make these big changes. Like we can't have a shop class because we don't have the room. So that was one of the other items. He's going to bring that to back to curriculum, and then it'll come back to the board. We talked about data trends. Eric was not, he shared a little, but didn't share a lot because that is just coming in. But he said that the preliminary data would make us very happy. So we'll see when that comes back to us. We talked about the junior achievement update. We talked about FBLA being one of the pathways. There's only 15 kids that are in FBLA now, which in past years has been 50, 60 kids in FBLA.
What's up, Neil?
Future Business Leaders of America. So they're going to work on that. They're going to also work on the middle school and 8th grade because they did their personal interest presentations or projects. So hopefully some of that will be in there. Let's see, that's 6, 7. And then we talked about the district climate surveys. The SEL 1 has been tabled, but we will be doing the climate survey. That probably will be done through EdAdvance because it's free. And then I think that was all we worked on. But we will have another meeting with Eric. If he needs us over the summertime for anything to be approved, well, he'll come to us, but otherwise we'll see him in September.
Okay. Nicole, policy.
We have not met since the last full board meeting, so I don't have any updates right now.
Okay, thank you. Sue, Booster Club,
Graduation went off well, the parade was a success.
except for people took a different
Except
route.
for the ones who don't know how to follow the leader, but that's okay, with a little trip down Captain Wooster among friends. But no, yeah, I think everything went well, and so now we're just getting ready, we'll start things up in next year, the summertime.
PTO,
Enjoying summer.
okay. Okay,
No finance?
Steve's not here. We have not met since the last meeting, so no finance. Okay, so executive session.
I'd like to make a motion to enter into executive session for the discussion of possible action regarding ratification of proposed Oxford Nurses Collective Bargaining Agreement and to invite Zach Shuren. Anyone else who's being invited?
Steve, do you want
Yes, yes.
And to include Dr. Adamowski.
Zach, could you come up here?
Second.
Second.